Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever part of the world you're tuning in from. This is Funny Like a Clown podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth, episode 180. It is February 24th, 2024. And we're here to discuss we'll get into a comic comedian. What is the difference? But we'll say a comic, the Godfather, Charlie Chaplin. As always, today's episode is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce for the spicy, sweet, savory taste at game time. There's only one G Vegas, the official Buffalo Sauce of Joke in the Box Comedy Club. Go to www.jokeinthebox.org, order some up, man, and you won't be disappointed. This is like the best stuff, okay? Whether you're watching some comedy at home, okay, or whether you're watching the game at home, whatever you're doing. Great stuff. I don't know if they had buffalo sauce back when Charlie Chaplin was around, but in any case, you wonder who the original Godfather of comedy is, because everybody's got their hero. Who is their hero? Who is your hero? You had right now this generation who's Taylor Swift. She's like bigger than anything. I just saw a recent thing. They said she's outselling Elvis and is now the biggest musical artist of all time, which is debatable because Elvis didn't have the platform she's releasing stuff on. There was no web back then or whatever, but that was the theory anyway. So it depends on whether you want to buy the theory or not. But if you want our generation, Bill Burr, Whitney Cummings, these are the big comics of nowadays. My generation, who were the Godfathers. You had Richard Pryor. They say he changed comedy. Richard Pryor changed it into dirty comedy. Sam Kinison here, he came along, he changed it into shock comedy. Who were their heroes? The Steve Martins, and so if you said who's the Godfather of comedy of our generation, probably they'd say Richard Pryor. If you asked our parents, they'd say, well, it's probably Johnny Carson. If you asked their parents, they'd probably say, who knows who was oh geez, I can't think of the guy's name now. Well, anyway, they all had their every generation had their Godfather comedy, but who was the original Godfather of comedy? And I guess I'd almost have to say you'd have to bring it back to Charlie Chaplin, because so many comics, who brought the next generation forward were inspired by this guy. And, he wasn't a comedian where he'd stand at a microphone and tell jokes, but he was a comic, as in like Luciel Ball, where his comedy came more through the screen or, in live shows or something like that, where he'd act out stuff that'd make you laugh rather than just stand there and tell jokes. But geez, silent film. I mean, that was the beginning of TV itself, the beginning of movies itself. Was before we had sound, we had silent films, and this guy, he was the king of that era. And if you go back before that, it's vaudeville. It's the local theaters. Who was the king of the theater? But I mean, who was the first Godfather of entertainment? I guess you'd have to say Chaplin. I know Laurel and Hardy. They were inspired by Charlie Chaplin, and I know Steve Martin's admitted he was inspired by Laurel from Laurel and Hardy. So I mean, it's who was inspired by Steve Martin was our generation. So I mean, bring it back. This guy was the original. A 75-year career. He rose to fame, as we said, during the silent film era, and became an icon with his character, the Tramp. Okay, so I mean, that's like Andrew Dice Clay. You say that he's a famous comedian, but it's a character he did, the Dice Man. When he first started out, the Dice Man, he was just one character he did in his whole routine, but the character became so popular that became his entire routine was the Dice Man. Even Eddie Murphy, I know. I'm so excited. I mean, that's one of my favorite comedy series of all time is Beverly Hills Cop. They're coming out with a new one and I can't wait to see it. But his character, Axel Foley, was just such a memorable character, and he even said it was tough to do this movie because Axel Foley's a 20-year-old character, and he's like in his 70s or whatever he's in now. So I was trying to play a 20-year-old character, but I'm so excited to see how it came out. So characters in comedy. I got a character called the child support superhero, which it took off. It took a life of its own. It did. I just started out as one of the routines I did. It became the most popular routine, and everybody was chasing me down after shows and wanting to tell me their story about dealing with the family law system and how dirty it was. And all of a sudden, the character took on a life of its own. I made a movie about it. Fox TV picked it up. They put it on the streaming service Tubi. You can watch it free with commercials. Called "The World Needs a New Superhero." So hey, if you're in comedy, the character, that's the way to go, man. That's the even Tim Allen with the Tool Man. I mean, made it into a TV series, one of the biggest TV series of all time, The Tool Man. That was just a routine he did about a guy liking his tools, in a marriage. So it's who knows what's going to catch on. He grew up in poverty, which I guess I had a rough upbringing too. I ain't gonna lie to you, man. And you either go crazy or you learn to laugh about it. A lot of people, if you're going through tough times, you got to learn to laugh about it. It's the only way you're going to survive. Or either that or you walk into McDonald's with a shotgun and start blowing people down. So if you don't want to do that, then you got to find the humor in it and say, hey, this is so far past ridiculous. I'm going to laugh about it. And they say laughter is the best medicine, man. It'll get you through some tough times. He started performing at a young age. He started touring music halls, which, like I said, before silent film, that was pretty much all you could do. Was you start, go one music hall to another and hope they book you. Kind of like now, you go one bar to another, hope they book you. Then you move up to, you move up to halls, then you move up to theaters, and then you hopefully hit the bag big time and move up to major places. Later, he became a stage actor. Okay, which yeah, like Broadway or whatever stuff like that. I mean, I'm not saying it was on Broadway, but I mean, he did the stage actor thing, kind of like what they do. He got signed to a contract, which that contract ended up bringing him over to the United States of America to perform. Okay, because if you want the money, USA, that's the place to be. Okay, so you could make some money overseas, but it certainly wasn't the platform that America was. I mean, they had the platform. So as he's performing over here as a stage actor, he's being scouted by the film industry, and started doing silent films in 1914. And I'll tell you, this guy's had such a career. It's probably gonna be one of my longest podcasts ever. This guy just so much. This guy did. I mean, a 75-year career, but I mean, to be one of the originals too. I mean, not that a lot of people have had 75-year careers, but back then and nowadays, it's a lot different having a 75-year career. Went on to direct his own films. By 1918, he was one of the world's best-known figures. 1919, he co-founded his own production company. Let's see, he gained control of his work. He put out The Kid, Woman of Paris, The Gold Rush, The Circus, City Lights, Modern Times, and that's one of the big things. I remember Richard Marx had a line in one of his songs I always admired. They're checking out his work and you want to scream, but you got to keep it all inside. When you're trying to make a living, there ain't no such thing as pride. It's like, you don't want nobody messing with your work, but at the same time, if they're offering you big bucks at the big time, you got to let them change what they want to change with your work. Because, I mean, to get complete control, even Buddy Holly, he had a messy experience, people trying to control his music, and he ended up walking out of the studio. Then the next time he got booked, he's like, I got complete control. They're like, no first time artist has complete control. Like, if you want me, that's what it's going to take. I get final say in everything. He said, if these guys making the changes, okay, if they could do what I do, you'd be paying them to make music, not me. So, which is a cocky attitude where, hey, these guys have been in the business for years. Who are you to tell them? I mean, I've had that with young comics. I've been booking successful shows for years. They want to tell me how to run things first day off the bat. It's like, well, who the hell are you? Well, everybody thinks the next Buddy Holly, the next big thing, they're going to do it their way, which is a good attitude, and it's good if you got to pay your dues before you can get that. So some people do, some people don't. He decided, he had done enough to pay his dues. If he got there, if he was going to make it, he was going to do it his way. And that's why I did the independent film, The World Needs a New Superhero. I had final say over everything. I didn't have to worry about, anybody telling me what to do. And it's a fun thing when you don't have to, have your work compromised by somebody else who can't see the vision in your head. He did his first sound film, The Great Dictator. They called him talkies back then. But he didn't think it was going to be a big thing. I mean, he thought it was going to be a fad. Like, yeah, talkies would come, then they'd go, and silent film would live forever. I mean, remember when people listen to radio? Radio was a big thing. When TV came along, like, oh yeah, TV, that's just a fad. It'll come and go. We'll be back to listening to the radio. But it was a fad that stuck, man. Everybody's got a TV, and that's like the next generation of what you're doing. Let's see. The Great Dictator was a satire of Adolf Hitler, and it was not well received, which made him decline in popularity in the United States. The FBI started investigating his involvement with underage girls. I guess, yeah, he had a thing for the young gals back then, which I see the big thing with Jeffrey Epstein. This guy had so much money, he created his own island, an own underground thing. They call it Pedophile Island. The FBI finally busted it, but back then, I mean, it was more common, for a thing like that to be with young girls. But I mean, it's still looked down upon, big stuff, and he was forced to leave the country because of it. Settled in Switzerland. He abandoned the tramp character in later films. I mean, he cut off ties with the U.S. After so much success he had there, and they turned their back on him. But years later, the U.S. they tried to make up for it once the Cold War passed, and that time in that era where everything was scrutinized. Received an honorary Academy Award, and if you get a chance, I'll tell you. Um, Robert Downey Jr. portrayed him in 1992's Chaplin, and I thought they did a very good job. Which I mean, even Robert Downey Jr. He's an established actor, but if you came to him, I remember the guy who took over the role of Jim Kirk in Star Trek. Okay, he said he's like, "Do you want to play?" He was so scared by that role. He said he had to take it, and it's like if somebody approaches you want to play Chaplin, you're going to be scared by that role. And I portrayed Sam Kinison, my hero, in a short film, and I was so scared to do it because I mean, I had met his brother, and I didn't know how he was going to receive it and everything, but it was to play your hero. That's a very very scary thing. I mean, not that he was his hero, but just to play an iconic character like that, it's like if you pull it off, oh, are you going to be out high? But if you blow it, oh my god, Sam said it once: you make a bad movie in Hollywood, you never work again. It's like you're taking a chance. Do you want to take that chance to go for the big time, or go for absolutely nothing? There's no in between. Let's see. Chaplin's parents were both entertainers, so I guess when you get both your parents are entertainers, you get entertainment in your blood. That's what you grew up watching. His mom had no income, and his father had no gave no financial support. So he was shuffled around to boys' homes. His mom ended up in a mental institution, and the boys were sent to live with his alcoholic father. I guess was why he wasn't around. Didn't offer much support. He's a bad alcoholic. Uh, his mother did tell him he always remembered if you have a talent, you should use it. That's good advice. Okay, never abandon what your dream is in life. Don't sell out for. I mean, yeah, you got to make a living. You got to go to work every day. But if you got the weekends, man, do what you love to do until it pays the bills. That's the way to go, is my opinion. And through his dad's connections, he started performing at a young age. So even though he was an alcoholic, before that, he did have some connections that helped him out there. At age 13, and that's a young age to make this decision, he abandoned his education for acting. He said, "You know what? I'm not going to school no more. I want to be an actor full time. That's my dream, and I'm gonna go do it." So he got praised for good performances and bad shows. So he was in a lot of shows that didn't do too well, but his character was like one of the bright spots in the films, which was what he got to start started to get known for. Where he was a good performance in a bad film. He secured a major role in a Sherlock Holmes play, and he decided he wanted to try comedy, so he entered the vaudeville circuit, which we talked about. And he was very successful in the vaudeville circuit. Really, he received considerable attention doing it. A picture company they caught his act and signed him, to perform in filming. He had a couple unsuccessful ones, but nobody's very few are just successful right off the bat. They get the old saying, you got to lose to know how to win. So he had a couple of bad ones, but after that, he put out some really good ones. Baggy pants, tight shirt, small hat, big shoes. He created a character called the Tramp, and boy, when he created the Tramp, that's when things really started to take off for him. That was the iconic character. The film company agreed to let him make his own film, and Chaplin agreed to pay money if it wasn't successful. Which I heard that about George Lucas too. When George Lucas, they wanted to start their own film company for the next generation, and the picture company said, "All right, we'll give you the money to do your own thing, okay? But if we don't like it, you got to pay us the money back." And it was kind of like that. All right, here's the money, Chaplin. If you think you do it, but if it's not successful, you got to pay us back. So that was kind of the deal they got. It's kind of like taking money from a bank, okay? Hey, if it's successful, you got the money to pay them back. If it's not successful, you still owe them the money. You got to work to pay the bank back. So that's pretty much what they told him. He wanted to make a he went on to make that one was not successful, so he ended up losing money. But after that, he wanted to make a string of successful movies. So he finally found his niche. Once he found his niche, he asked for big money and a new contract because I mean his stock was rising like crazy. The film company said no, so he left for another one. Landing for and leaving for another, he gained more control over his pictures. Started to become featured in comic strips, which that's an old thing. Remember, man, I remember getting the old newspapers. That was the first thing when I was a kid. Oh, I just want to read the funnies. I want to read the comics. It was a big thing when I was a kid. Nowadays, I don't know if the kids don't look forward. There's so many media platforms. It's yeah, the funnies are there, but you're not dying to see them each week like you were when you were a kid. We lost something, or we gain one thing, we lose another. We gain the internet, we lose comics and funnies. Let's see. They made some songs about him and his character, the Tramp. He started to become a national phenomenon at age 26. He was one of the highest paid people in the world. Okay, not in the freaking comedy industry, not in motion picture, in the world. This guy's one of the biggest paid people. So that's telling you how much money this guy's making at the peak of his career. And we're going to tell you about that one later on, and your jaw will drop. But we'll save that for the beginning. Let's see. The big problem was, I guess, also all of a sudden Charlie Chaplin impersonators started to appear, and he had to take legal action. That's like how many Elvis impersonators are there now? And the Elvis estate they let it happen, but I mean legally they could take action and say, "Hey, Elvis is a patent character. You have no right to impersonate him." And so a lot of people are making money off of impersonating the Tramp, which takes away from his audience. Well, we don't have to pay big bucks to go see the actual Tramp. We can just pay less money and go see an impersonator. So he took legal action against them. Let's see. They said when there were costume parties, 9 out of 10 men would dress up as the Tramp for the costume party. It was that popular of a character where everybody wanted to be him. It was an American obsession, I guess they'd call it. Kind of like Taylor Swift is now. She's an American obsession right now. Like Elvis was in our parents' day. He was an American obsession, okay? Let's see. He kept looking for independence, though. It's like, I mean, I don't care how sweetheart of a deal you sign, how good it is. You always got to answer to somebody else if you're working. If you're using somebody else's money, I don't care how much freedom you got. At the end, you got to answer to somebody. Okay, where if you're doing it, if you're paying your own bills, you got nobody to answer to but yourself. So he thought the quality of his films were suffering because they were pressuring him to put out so many films. It's like, hey, you're hot right now. Let's make some money while you're hot before you end up you don't. We keep pumping out films. We can make more money, but the quality's suffering because you're not taking the time it takes to make them right. So he was kind of if he put out a film, he wanted to do it right. So they were going for quantity over quality, and that didn't fly well with him. He wanted the quality. He wasn't hung up on the money aspect of it. He was a performer. Let's see. In 1917, he signed for $1 million for 8 films, which, $1 million is a lot of money nowadays. In 1917, $1 million was buco. I mean, buco bucks back then. Not everybody had $1 million like they do today. So, with the money he got from that, he bought 5 acres of land and he built his own studio. He joined with fellow actors and producers to open his own distribution company. And back then that's what you had to do to gain independent freedom. And like I said, it's a new day and age now where there's a lot of people getting, YouTube is a free platform for anybody to use, and they're getting famous on YouTube. And they don't have to answer to anybody. The production companies are getting mad that hey, they're not getting a cut. They used to get a cut. Now these people are becoming stars on YouTube, and they don't answer to anybody. Joey Diaz once says, "What the fuck are you canceling me from? Oh, no, nobody's got. I'm on a public platform. Nobody's canceling me, so that's the place to be." Now, yeah, and every time this guy started to take off, it was dating the young woman. He had a bad marriage. And he said it really stumped his creativity, which I can attest to that. I mean, I've been through. I'm a victim of parental alienation. My son hasn't talked to me in years because his mother's talked so much crap about me to him, and that alone would be tough enough to. On top of that, my best friend I grew up with since we were little kids commit suicide, and the woman I love. I've had a lot of bad girlfriends. I finally found the woman of my dreams, love of my life, woman I was going to spend the rest of my life with. She got diagnosed with MS and just got sicker, 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 sicker. She's bedridden. We're not going to be together. Yeah, and it's like you don't feel like making people laugh. Okay, yeah, I mean, you're a comedian. That's what you love to do. But I mean, when there's so much torture in your life like that, it's like yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like when you do a comedy show for a benefit show. You do like you're trying to raise money for a cancer patient, and thank you for coming tonight. Gee, she's been in so much pain with cancer. It's been horrible, but thank you. And here's Dennis to make you laugh. It's like, well, thanks for the setup there. It's like, so I can see, he went through this really bad breakup, bad marriage, and it really it stumped his creativity. You don't feel like getting up and going to your studio and trying to be funny. You don't feel like making people laugh. I mean, life can kick you down, and as much as you want to find the comedy, the funny part of it, and you use comedy to get through it. That some days you just don't feel like being funny. He released a drama that he didn't appear in, and it flopped. So he got more into the directing part than the appearing part, but didn't work out so good for him. So he went back to the comedy film, The Gold Rush. Cost him $1 million to make, but he ended up making $5 million on it, so that was a good deal. First actor ever to appear on the Time magazine cover, which back then was a big thing. He got his second marriage to a 16-year-old, and I guess she became pregnant, so he went off to Mexico to marry her in private to try to keep things quiet. And she started saying bad things about him in public, which was starting to ruin his character. So again, getting involved with these young women, it certainly wasn't doing him any favors. But hey, when you're an old guy and I guess a young girl's interested in you, then you make bad decisions sometimes. Finally, he settled a divorce with the woman for $600,000, which was the most ever in recorded history for that time. So this woman got 600,000. He was out of the marriage, and I mean, geez, the most ever for that time. I just that's not a place you want to be number one in is in divorce settlements. Okay, but he paid it. He did what he had to do. Sound films were just taking over at that point, and he was really, really hesitant to give the Tramp a voice because he said, he thought you were taken away from, the character he created, the Tramp, where silent film, if you gave him a voice, it was going to take so much away and ruin the character, because he was known for, for being silent was what made him popular. So, hey, do I want to take the chance on ruining my character here by giving him a voice? By 1940s, he was lost popularity by expressing his political views, which, yeah, I did. I was like, I'll do a small part of my act with some political humor because I was watching like Dennis Miller and, Seth Meyers and all these guys on Comedy Central doing these political shows that were just hysterical. But I found out, man, you can piss people off real quick by doing political humor. I'll tell you, I cut it out of my act real quick. I said, this ain't going to work. I mean, that's well, what race, religion, disease, and politics. Those are the big four you're not supposed to touch when you do comedy because you can really offend people. And he started expressing his political beliefs in his movies, which were really turning people away. It's like, hey, we don't want your political view, we just want comedy. But it's tough. It's what he believed in, and it's like, I truly believe children, deserve both parents equally, and I do a lot of it in my act. that's how I chose to get my message across, by using comedy. Because I said, people are listening to you for a little bit. I don't want to listen to you complain. Your friends will listen to you a little longer. Then, I don't want to listen to you complain about child support. But if I made them laugh about it, if I put it in a comedy routine, now you want to hear my message. You want to hear what I got to say. So he was starting to use his movies to get people to hear what he wanted to say politically. But yep, it worked out good for me. I got a big following out of it because I became the guy everybody wanted to talk to. But for him, it backfired. I mean, not that it's not a really political view. I mean, everybody, I guess, in the back of their head thinks children deserve both parents equally. Where if you're talking about a political thing, you got the Republican and Democratic Party, and you're passionate about your party, so you don't want to insult the other one. All right, so let's see. As we said, he did in The Great Dictator. He portrayed Hitler, and everybody was thinking Hitler was doing all these bad things, and he was talking about all these bad things, but it was bad things America was doing, and he was using Hitler as a form to get America to look at itself. Hey, you want to complain about Hitler? Well, what about all the bad stuff? You think you're so great in America? Look at all the bad stuff you did, and America did not take kindly to that, boy. So he was really starting to suffer in popularity. Again, he got involved with another young actress, and she said he was the father of her baby. Blood tests revealed that he was not the father's baby, but back then in court, and even still today, I know California law, if you're said the baby, then you're responsible for it, even if it's found out later on that you're not. That don't fly in California court. Happened to a friend of mine, Carl LeBove. Yeah, it was like he was found. He said he was the father. He thought he was. Come to find out, he wasn't. And even though he wasn't, he still had to pay the child support because it was adjudicated originally he was. So messed up laws. They need to change. We all know that. So even though the test said Charlie Chaplin wasn't the kid's father, he was still ordered to pay child support on a kid that was not even his. Figure that one out. Um, and he said the trials, they just crippled his creativeness. I mean, before it was hurting. At this point, he was just crippled. I mean, how many times can you go through this same thing with getting just everything you accomplish just torn down in court? I think what Sam had a saying one time. Sam Kinison, yeah, I better learn how to have sex really good. That way, I don't have to give away everything I own every 5 years. I mean, that's pretty much what it did. This guy's working himself up, and everything is crashing down because these women are taking him to court. And I can see that crippling your creativeness. Absolutely. So he got in hot water again for using his political views. Along with the divorce scandal. So between the political views and the divorce scandal, this guy was just really, really, the American people were turning their back on him. There were boycotts of his movies. The FBI wanted him out of the country. He was known socializing with communists, and he said they're just my friends. Well, you're socializing with known communists. If they're your friends, are you a communist? And yeah, between using his movies to attack America and him socializing with communists, they wanted him out of the country. So they're trying to figure out how to get this guy, and he's trying to defend himself, and it's turning into a big bloodbath here. And hey, go be funny, Charlie. On top of that, don't work. He made a movie based in London, so he decided because it was based in London to he's going to premiere it in London. So he hopped on a plane, and when he was hopping on the plane, he had a premonition. He said, "You know what? I got a feeling I'll never see America again." So when he's over in London doing the premiere of the movie, the United States revoked his reentry papers, so he couldn't get back in America. They said he wouldn't let him back in America unless he'd submit to an interview, and they wanted to talk about his, communist connections and who he was talking to and what was going on there. He refused to do the interview. He cut ties with the U.S. He ended up he settled in Switzerland, and I remember he said he had to send his wife over here because he still owned the studio, he still owned the house, all his personal stuff was there, all his bank accounts, the money was here. So he sent his then wife over to settle up things. Uh, he ended up making a movie called A King in New York, which he he used the movie again to express all the trouble he went through with the United States and the FBI and all they put him through. So in 1964, he released an autobiography. Became a worldwide bestseller because everybody well, while you were turning your back on him, you were still interested, like O.J. Simpson. You turned your back on him, but everybody was so interested in that trial. I mean, same thing. Hey, we're sick of this guy expressing his political views, but oh my God, the FBI want him in the country. All of a sudden, it becomes this big what's going on with Charlie Chaplin type thing. He ended up making his last film, A Countess from Hong Kong, starring Marlon Brando, which Marlon Brando, huge actor back then, but it ended up being a box office failure. Chaplin was really deeply hurt by this. He put so much into the film and thought it was going to be good, and it was not so much that it was a bad film, just it was more the negativity toward it because again, they're not accepting his work anymore. They're more looking at him as a communist and a child molester or whatever. So his work was suffering, and he was hurt by that. And by the 60s, he had a series of small strokes, not big ones, and his health was in a declining rate. He wanted to make more movies, but his health would not allow it. He started re-releasing some of his old films, was how he got around it. 1972, the Academy Awards offered an honorary award to him. Okay, it was, like I said, it was after the Cold War. The United States, hey, this guy was an icon. We need to make amends here. We were, the FBI did what they had to do, but we were wrong chasing him out of the country. He gave us so much, and I forget. There was one famous painter who was a Van Gogh or whatever. He cut off his ear. The guy was so freaking crazy. A woman did something. He cut off his ear and mailed it to her or something. But you can't take away from his paint, though. His paint was still the best ever, whether he was nuts or not. So, hey, we all have our problems in life, but you can't take away from the work that this guy did just because he had some problems like everybody else. And so the United States decided, hey, we're going to appreciate his work, and his personal life is his personal life, which is the way it should be. Separate the two. He was hesitant at first, but he decided to accept the award. He came back to the U.S. for the first time in 20 years. So 20 years later, he returns to the United States to receive this award. When he goes to the Academy Awards to receive it, he gets a 12-minute standing ovation, the longest in the history of the Academy Awards. And I can't just imagine just sitting there. I mean, I can imagine you clap. All right, this guy's good. Let's clap for 2 minutes. You get into 5 minutes. You get into 10 minutes. You get into, it's like, how long are we going to clap? But that's how much admiration they had for this guy and all they gave him, all the work he gave us, all the movies that, they all grew up watching. So, I mean, to sit there and just clap standing up for 12 minutes straight, and not stopping, that's saying something. He planned on making more films with his daughter. And like I said, his health wouldn't allow it. He released some old films, re-released some old films. I remember Guns N' Roses, yeah, when they released Welcome to the Jungle, and years later, it's like everybody knew it. It was such a big hit. Then they re-released it. It's like, well, everybody knows it. Why would you re-release it? But I don't know, maybe to break records or something like that. I don't know what the real reason was, but let's see. 1977. Well, he appeared in a documentary about himself. So I guess if you want to, I don't know what the documentary is, but if you want to see that was pretty much the last thing where he appeared as himself in the documentary when they're talking about him. 1977, he was 88 years old. That's a good life, 88, if we can all live that long. He died of a stroke in his sleep. And hey, if you're going to go in your sleep's the way to go. Now here's the big one I told you earlier. I'll tell you at the end. He left his wife, okay, $100 million. Which even today, $100 million, but back then to leave somebody $100 million back then, that's like a billion nowadays. I don't know what it would equal out to, but $1 million back then, $100 million back then, that's like this guy was up there, one of the wealthiest people in the freaking world. And I said earlier, who was Richard Pryor, Bill Burr, who was his who was the Godfather before Bill Burr? Well, you go back to Richard Pryor. Who was that before him? Steve Martin and Johnny Carson. And you go back to the old days. But who? I can't think of the guy's name. It's on the tip of my tongue. Oh well. Anyway, every generation, they had their, their Godfather that they looked up to, and but where Charlie, he was the first Godfather. He was the first one to use, silent film. That was the beginning of, mainstream, Godfather status. Before that, like we said, it was all, vaudeville and halls and, stuff like that. They asked Charlie who his heroes were, and he said that he credits his mom, who always said, I guess she'd sit at the window and just say something funny about people walking by the front of their house. And he always got a kick out of that. So his mom was his creative hero. He said he liked clowns, which is, your average nowadays, clowns are horror things. But, back when we were a kid, you used to bring clowns to your birthday party that make you laugh. He always thought clowns, that gave him some inspiration. And he said vaudeville, like we said, vaudeville. He had a lot of influence from there. He had a lot of people on the vaudeville circuit that he would absolutely love. Now, what the heck did I just do here? All right, we're still rolling. I thought I lost you for a second. We're not. We're rolling. So, if you wonder who the original Godfather's heroes were, where did it all start? Where did it all come from? Well, before the Bill Burrs, before the Richard Pryors, the George Carlins, the Steve Martins, the Rodney Dangerfields, the Bill Cosby, the Sam Kinnisons. Who was the original? Well, it goes back to clowns. It goes back to your parents being funny, your mom if you had funny parents, and it goes back to vaudeville, just the local person you're seeing down at the local theater. That's where it all started. Then TV hit, and then radio hit, and then radio hit, then TV hit, then movies hit, and you got a good movie nowadays, and you're never going to work another day in your life. So that's the dream in comedy. So everybody go out, watch Charlie Chaplin's work, and go out, help me out, watch mine. You go to Tubi, it's free with commercials. It's called The World Needs a New Superhero. It's my first full-length movie I made, and I could use some support on that. Give it a watch. Tell me what you think. Leave the comments in this video. Charlie Chaplin, the original Godfather. Long live the king. Good night.